Past the fields and beyond Main Street, connections are the lifeblood of small towns. They bring friendship in good times,
but I wouldn't give this up for anything in the world.
And support in bad times.
It's real hard to keep breathing and keep going.
In the next half hour, we uncover the people who strengthen and transform small towns.
My heart and soul is in this library.
We'll meet the people who are the pulse of their communities. We'll meet hometown heartbeats. Oakland, Illinois, a town of about 800 people, a handful of railroad crossings, and no traffic lights. There's the high school, and the field that hosts Tri-County football in fall. There's the police station, and in the town square, there's a monument commemorating a hometown boy. This is the story of one of America's heroes, one of Oakland's heroes. This is the story of Army First Lieutenant Jared W. Southworth.
He was on the move all the time, always had to be doing something. He was so fun, energetic, hyper, not necessarily in a bad way, but just couldn't sit still. If you play basketball, do whatever you got to do. And that was kind of him. He was out and moving, and that was pretty much his whole life.
If you were around our age in Oakland, you were playing basketball, football, baseball, things like that. We were just pretty much always outside doing sports and activities like that.
Boys will be boys on the playground, and we're talking third, fourth grade, and somebody's bullying somebody else or whatever. And it was just, even though it was his friends that were doing the bullying, he was like, stop. They didn't. He come home, he said, Mom, they won't stop or whatever. And he goes, I'm gonna take care of it. I was like, no, and I got called over to the school, and I said, did you tell the teacher? And he said, we're all in there, and the teacher and the principal, and he goes, yes. And I said, how many times? He said, 3. So I looked at the principal, and he goes, well, I guess that takes care of that. And he didn't get in trouble because he was helping, someone else. He didn't like somebody picking on somebody else.
His mom says Jared always wanted to be a cop, and when he grew up, he joined the Oakland Police Department.
He was a heads-up kid. I knew he would be a good fit in the police department in a small town. He knew a lot of the folks. He knew who the good folks were and the not-so-good folks were. And I hired him because there was an opening. He wasn't 21 yet, but I could hire him, but he just couldn't carry a gun.
In fact, Jared even talked his father into going through police training too, so he could cover for Jared when he had to be out of town. And Jared had to be out of town because he was training for the Army. Jared's brother Michael was deployed to Iraq in 2004, just before Jared completed all the necessary training. When Jared deployed in 2008, his brothers stayed behind. Jared's moment was coming, and he was finally deployed to Afghanistan.
But the way it is, they're supposed to at least be home a year before they have to deploy. So it gave my son, Michael, the opportunity. He didn't go because he was getting ready to get married, and Jared was going. And but he would be back in time to be best man, because they would be back a few months before, but Michael kind of needed to be here to plan the wedding and things like that. So Michael didn't go, but Jared did, only he didn't come home.
Southworth was stationed in southern Afghanistan. His job was to train Afghan soldiers. Those Afghan soldiers found an improvised explosive device, and it would have taken days for the proper team to get there and properly disable it. Protocol doesn't allow a device to be left behind once it's discovered, so the soldiers removed the inner wiring and called Southworth over to inspect it.
Unfortunately, Jared did that and was standing over the top of it, and it's what they refer to as a Trojan horse. So it had multiple detonation devices. They thought they had disarmed it by getting rid of the hardwired connections, but that had a cell phone detonator buried in it as well. And so as he was standing over the top of it amongst a couple of other Afghans and one of the other NCOs from the Illinois Guard that was killed at the same time, another Afghan fighter had had detonated the device while he was standing effectively right over top of it.
It was February 8th, 2009. Back in Oakland, Kim felt something was wrong. She couldn't grade papers and couldn't concentrate. She went for a drive to clear her head and returned home just in time.
I walked into the house, still a nervous wreck, and I started putting in laundry. Michael just gotten home from drill and he was upstairs, and I saw the two officers come walking down the driveway. So I yelled at Bob and Michael. I said, something's happened to Jared. Didn't know if he was killed or captured or what the deal was, but it was, they send an officer and then, a minister with them. But of course they went next door to his wife, Chrissy. And so I didn't hear anything, and I'm just standing on a porch. So finally I said, I gotta know, and I went over there. And I walked in, and, so they just said, who are you? I said, I'm Jared's mom. I just gotta know. And they said, he's gone.
I got the call from Kim, his mother. She told me, and my son knew there was something wrong, and he kept asking me what's wrong. I couldn't get the words out.
As a mom, how do you go on? But you have his kids, you have other grandkids, everybody. I have 2 children. You don't have a choice.
It took 10 days for Jared's body to come home. Kim was grateful for the support of the military and other agencies, but she also felt lucky to have the support of the people of the area. It seemed like everyone found a spot to watch the funeral procession from the Coles County Airport to the Oakland Cemetery.
When people give you those hugs, my husband, believe me, is not a hugger, but it gives you strength when people just give you a hug, and because you need it to keep going because you don't have anything left.
It was the very essence of a hero's welcome home. Thousands of people, and not just from Oakland, not from Charleston, but a lot of people from Central Illinois came to pay their respects, and it gets to you.
It's real hard to keep breathing and keep going, and to see that support is probably the only thing that got his dad and I through that.
Of course, those crowds are gone now. The ceremony's long past. But Jared Southworth and his story persist here in Oakland. Oakland, Illinois. A town of roughly 800 people. Each day, drivers pass by on the First Lieutenant Jared W. Southworth Memorial Highway. In the town square, they walk by that monument of one of America's heroes, one of Oakland's heroes.
I love you. Miss you. And I'm proud of you. Did a great job.
These look like these were taken out of Lake Mattoon.
After Chris Surdick retired in 2017, following 47 years in the electrical business, he went looking for a project to fill his time.
All these in here were photos that I just found in our archive.
So I was talking to the director of the library one day, and he invited me to come down here to this history room, and it was just a disorganized mess of stuff. And he says, how would you like to spend a little time and maybe start trying to organize this? He said, you could spend, maybe a couple hours a week. Well, after the first day, I was here every day, all day. And it took me about a year to just really get stuff organized, go through all the files, because people, luckily, the librarians over the years had saved stuff, but there just had never been anybody who had the opportunity to do anything with it.
And as Chris spent more time amid Mattoon's past, he began imagining ways to share it in the future.
So after about a year, really, I came to realize that we just had a wealth of information and photos and illustrations that needed to be shared. So I went back to him and I said, you know, do you think I could get a little budget to frame some stuff and put it on the walls? So this area right here is the very first display that I developed after I started putting things together. And so part of this, the reason I did this area is because as you step off the elevator, I wanted to kind of grab people's attention. So right there in that corner is a vignette that shows what a railroad freight office would have looked like. And that was kind of the very first display that I did. When Mattoon was founded, the two railroads crossed. So this photo gives a very good, well, actually this illustration. So the New York Central trains were going east and west, and the Illinois Central trains were going north and south.
While Chris chronicles Mattoon's story, he knows Mattoon is an important part of his story.
But what makes it even more interesting is the fact that it's a ticket to a circus that wasn't held.
I've been a lifelong resident of Mattoon, and just like my heart and soul is in this library, I'm just really have always, I feel a real affinity for Mattoon. It's a great community. And when I did this room, I didn't have any vision of doing anything. At that time, I figured this was it.
What has your community given you?
Well, I've raised my family here. I've been active in many organizations. You know, I'm active in our church. We've got a wealth of friends. There's been a tremendous amount of support from people for not only things we do here, but you know, different times we have things in our personal lives. I just feel like I've got a very good background of people that appreciate what you do.
Through the years, the displays and collections here grew under Chris's care, becoming what's now known as the History Center.
About 2 years ago, we got a bequest from a person that died. He was in Minneapolis, and when he passed away, he left $10,000 to our library to start a Civil War study center. And the reason for that was he was originally from Mattoon, and his kids told me that he always told them that he developed his love for the Civil War, to study the Civil War, by coming to the library when he was a kid and reading all the Civil War books that we had. So that was his way of giving back.
Of course, there are other points of pride in Mattoon as well.
One of the very interesting stories, and I'm sure you guys have all heard about it, is the story of Mattoon's original Burger King. And I'd like to tell people that the Burger King is what put me through Eastern Illinois University. I worked there at night while I was going to school. And so that's also a subject that's kind of very near and dear to my heart. And I stayed friends with the owners, Gene and Betty, all the way through their lives.
When Chris began working on the History Center, he had no idea how large the project would become.
This whole History Center just kind of took a life of its own, and I developed it first this room, and then the room behind us, and then the hallway, and then another room, and it's just grown. I never had the vision that we'd wind up being the entire basement. This room, so I tell people this. I think this is funny. I call this the COVID room. Because during COVID, the library was closed, and you had to stay 18 feet apart from somebody, and you had to wear a stupid mask. So the library was closed. So I came down here every day and developed this entire room.
While these rooms have become a center for local history, Chris has too.
But almost everywhere I go now, people recognize me, and they'll come up to me and they say, "Hey, you're the guy at the History Center. I really liked what you put up last week," or, "Hey, if you get a chance, I'd like you to look up where this building used to be." So I get a lot of acknowledgement that way. But I think from a personal point of view, I kind of look upon this as, this is kind of my gift. Putting all this history together and preserving it is kind of my personal gift back to the community for the things that the community's done for me. I think I am performing a service to the community that gives me a great deal of pleasure, and gives me a great deal of pleasure to know that other people not appreciate it because it's me, but appreciate it for what it is that I'm doing and for the history that I'm preserving. Every time I put one of these displays up down here, the first question I ask is, will somebody 25 years from now be interested in looking at this? And because this is here for a lifetime.
Head off the highway and through the town of Casey, and you may see a strip of local businesses. Chances are a few of them are owned by the Yates family.
My name's Greg Yates. I'm the owner of the Hometown Butcher Shop in Casey, Illinois. We've also got a couple of other family businesses here in town. That's one is Inclusive Printing and the other is the Olive Tree Marketplace.
Greg grew up in Casey, but when his children went off to college, Greg and his wife moved along to Chicago.
I had already sold another business in my late 30s, and I should have just stopped right there. But I was still, eager to test myself, really. And both of our children went to school up there. I went to college up there, and my wife and I are looking at each other. I didn't need to live anywhere in particular. I was doing a lot of consulting at that time, a lot of traveling, and she said, I'm not going to be a long-distance grandma. So we bought a house up there and moved up, kind of followed them up there, and as fate would have it, as soon as I got there were just opportunities, opportunities to buy businesses, to buy property, to get involved in things, and so we took advantage of them.
But that move didn't last forever.
We moved back for the same reason we moved up. The last business that I sold was a string of Jimmy John's stores. And when we sold them, our daughter Lacey was running those shops, and she decided she wanted to move down here, and she bought my mother's house, who had just passed away. So she bought the house. Our son had already moved back here, and we were sitting up there where we had chased them up there, and then they're gone. So we looked at each other and said, guess we'll move back.
Over time, Greg and his family launched new businesses in their hometown. There's the butcher shop, the printing shop, and a home goods store. Greg says it's not like he had it all figured out. It just happened.
You can't really have community if you don't have the fundamental elements and almost utilities of a community. If you don't have that. That's one of my thoughts about the butcher shop here, is that, we need a full-blown grocery store. It's a little town, we don't have one. But this is at least something where people can get what they need for dinner.
One of Greg's favorite parts of Casey is the community.
I really enjoy being here because I can always drive to the city if I want to. I can always go visit, go to the theater, go to shows, do whatever I want, go to ball games. I can always do that. But the small town really gives you traction with the kind of relationships you're building and feeling like your life actually impacted somebody else and it mattered. And maybe I think about that a little more at my age. The only way you really feel or know that you've actually made a difference in people's lives is that you see them, you connect, and somewhere hopefully you also make economic sense out of it. But yeah, the people side of it, like I said, there's only a couple things that matter. And the relationships that you build in life, how do you measure them? Do you measure them transactionally? Or do you measure them emotionally? How do you measure them? And I think you see it over time with the people that you rub elbows with every day.
Greg says that those kinds of relationships are all too precious.
One of the things that historically made this country great, really, is the connection that people have with each other. And so much of that's been lost. And I think the place that you find that is in smaller communities.
Above all else, there's one thing he believes everyone needs.
The greatest challenge is for people to feel like people relate to, appreciate, and understand you even. And I think it's almost too much to ask. I think you just can't expect it, that they're going to. But I think it focuses on all of us that we should be looking for that in others. Because there are other people who are giving their best and we think, well, yeah, they're here. We don't give them the validation. That's a great word, the validation that they need. It's so needed by everybody, you, me, we all need it. I want to encourage anybody, if this clip ever makes it anywhere, validate each other. It's free, it doesn't cost anything. It's the greatest gift you can ever give somebody. So let them know they matter, what they're due, they're seen.
Some have stories that stretch beyond town limits. Stories of life on the road. Stages. and spotlights.
I spent from very young to very old on the road, and I think I finally retired about 8 years ago.
This is the story of Jerry Winters and the small town he calls home.
I was born in Ohio, Buckeye, in a little town called Berea, and my parents were on the road professionally, so I ended up going on the road when I was 4 and 5.
Jerry's entire family worked in show business, and every person had a job to do every night.
My mother was a typical stage mother. My brothers and I, we were, 3, 5, and 7, something like that. And then, of course, my father, and so she was in charge of the laundry. We would all rendezvous after the show or after the evening was at the house, and I remember well, my mother always had hot chocolate and so forth and so on, and then she immediately grabbed our white shirts. They hit the laundry, and she did all the laundry and the pressing for the next night or whatever. And so those were part of the memories.
Jerry's own career took off. And took him far and wide. And through that career, Jerry met Joan.
She was in my audience over 50 years ago in San Francisco when I met her. She sent a card back with her picture on it, and she was out of Dallas, Texas then, wanting my agent's phone number, and I invited her back to the green room. My grandson said, "Grandpa, was that?" He hadn't seen that card. "I have it here." And he said, "Wow, who's that?" And I said, "That's your grandma." "Is that the first time you saw her?" And I said, "Yeah." Was it love at first sight? I thought I was getting a little pushy. I said, "I've always been upfront with you." It was instantaneous combustion. Well, to be honest, as I look back again, and I told him this too, it was lust at first sight. And I said, and then after you're married so many years, it became love at first sight from the beginning.
Joan became Jerry's manager. Together, they traveled the world. Along the way, something caught Joan's eye.
She said, "What are those paintings here?" "They're my paintings." "What do you do with those?" "When are you painting?" I said, "In the hotel room since I was 6, I think."
Winters got into painting after his mother gave him a paint-by-numbers kit.
Quite often I would sit for hours and do these paintings to stay out of trouble anyway.
Jerry is considered a naive painter, meaning he has no formal education in fine art.
And we call our naive artists here folk artists, for lack of a better word. We call them quite often Americana.
Eventually, art became their focus.
And when we retired, we had 5 galleries plus in Carmel, California, and right near Mr. Clint Eastwood, and we had Betty White as a neighbor there, and Doris Day, and so forth. For all those years that we were married, that was our home base.
But as the years passed, challenges grew. Jerry and Joan were getting older, and living abroad wasn't getting easier. Joan came to Jerry with an idea.
She said, "I'm seriously considering Arthur." "Who is Arthur?" That was my response. She said, "In Arthur, we can rent a building. I will be the person to take out of my boutiques in Carmel certain lines and work the floor. I'll move your Steinway here behind the counter, and I'll start a little easel here for you to paint. And we'll get a house out here with a little studio in it. And we can put a sign on the door that says gone to France, fishing and wherever. And we could really retire that way. So no employees. We don't have to be answering to anybody. except God decided that COVID, it was time. We got back here and COVID got her. And I had to bury her out here without a funeral or anything. And I went into a deep depression, and I didn't know anybody here. They thought I was from outer space. I thought these people were terribly pushy. And it didn't take long to find out they were just caring, dear people. I mean, we have a dozen churches or whatever here. And every one of them came. And 2 or 3 of them came and say, "Oh, you play piano. Would you be interested in helping?" And I was trying to process all of it. And finally, God told me to shut up. No, he said, "Be still and know that I am God." And that brought me through. He brought me through. Come to Arthur, that's it. Come and dine. I love this place. Go to Yoder's, the chicken's wonderful.
Winters had found a home in Arthur, in more ways than one.
Grandpa has always been a real light in my life, and an influential light at that, because I like to take the things from how I think Jerry sees the world and what I know, how I know Jerry sees the world, and make them my own little pieces of who I want to be and how I want to see the world also.